But one of the earliest people to sound the alarm was the former leader of the Conservative group on Tower Hamlets Council, Andrew Wood. And Councillor Wood joins me, or Andrew joins me on the line now. So you resigned as leader back in February. First of all, why? Second of all, what happened next?
Well, the reason why is in January I'd already had doubts about the Conservative Party and my membership of it. But I kind of worked out that maybe I should stay in because maybe it's best for my residents to be able to go talk to ministers. And then the minister's decision comes out on the 14th of January. And the more I read it, basically the angrier that I got. And I was so shocked by his decision and then the ramifications of it and the avoidance of the community infrastructure levy payment that I kind of knew that my position was not sustainable. So after tying up a few loose ends and telling people I was going to go, I actually left in early February. And then, sorry, go ahead.
No, you carry on. I'm all ears.
And then I was just slightly worried that perhaps my decision had been premature, that maybe there were good grounds for this decision, but the more that comes out into the public domain, the worse the original decision looks. And I said last night I was right to resign over this. Because, the facts now in the public domain after the release of some of the documents yesterday are very interesting. And just to contradict some of the things that have been said by others, not all of the documents are yet in the public domain. The Minister Robert Jenrick said yesterday only those which are FOI-able were released, right. and a bunch of FOIs were due yesterday from me and other, and also from journalists. And there are other documents that went to the Cabinet Secretary that have not yet been put in the public domain.
That's an important clarification, actually, because I think you're right. Senior politician, at least one this morning, was claiming that all of the relevant documents had been put into the public domain. So we will watch this space with interest. Before we get into the detail of the deal, I wonder if you could talk a little about how it impacted on you personally, because you don't become a councillor unless you have an interest in these matters, and the idea that £45 million could have made its way into the coffers of one of the poorest boroughs in the country, the poorest borough in London, and then for reasons that I think you are very suspicious of, it suddenly wouldn't. Did it? I suppose I want to know whether you felt let down.
Yes. So the interesting thing is that yes, we are the poorest borough in some respects, but actually from a cash point of view, we have lots of money because all of these developments generate huge amounts of money for the council. We also get lots of business rates like Canary Wharf as well. So actually in terms of our own financial reserves, actually Tower Hamlets Council I would define as a rich borough, but does have high levels of deprivation within it as well. So,
and have you come to any conclusions about why this was done, why Mr Jenrick elected to take the decision that he took, especially as of today, if you see what I mean, having seen the documents that were published yesterday? Is there any, in your view, mileage in the viability defence, the claim that if you didn't waive the £45 million community infrastructure levy, then the whole project would have become unviable?
No, so there is no mileage in that whatsoever because of all of the expert evidence available from a bunch of other people. And what was very interesting in the documents last night is that the officials working for the minister did a summary of the key issues on the site. They also recommended that the scheme be rejected as well, agreeing with the planning inspector. But not once in that document do they outline any concerns over viability or that the scheme couldn't be delivered. And the other interesting thing is there are other sites in the area that were approved last year that delivered 35% affordable housing, that paid SIL and provided land for schools. But for some reason, the Print Works site, though it does provide land for a school, can only deliver 21% affordable housing. And that originally had been 35%. And one of the things that's been missed so far is Desmond originally offered 35% affordable and then last year dropped it to 21%. And the minister didn't really deal with that. And also, by the timing of the decision, avoided paying the £45 million of community infrastructure levy as well on the site.
I sense you were even more troubled then by the reduction in the affordable housing provision than you were by the, I choose my words carefully, but the speed of the, or the timing of the community infrastructure levy lifting.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing about the SIL is it was a very clear relationship in terms of the timing. The next day was the vote where we approved it, and because it's a nice big round number of what we now know to be £45 million, that number has changed over the previous weeks.
Of course.
And I also asked Tower Hamlets Council Planning Department to try and quantify what the drop in affordable housing is from 35 to down to 21%. And their broad estimate is the value of that is approximately £40 million. So in total, Desmond benefited by £85 million from the decisions that the minister made. And it was very interesting that in the documents released last night, that, I mean, literally 2 hours before they released the document, the officials were worrying about the affordable housing percentage issue. But by that point, it was just simply too late to deal with it. And I think that the officials didn't expect the minister to approve the planning application. So they weren't really set up for an approval. They were set up internally and organised for a rejection letter.
So it caught everybody on the hop. Finally, Andrew, and briefly, if you would, what do you think personally and politically, of course, about Robert Jenrick's position this morning? This morning.
So I've said I still think he should resign. The text messages last night, all of the new information. So every time the fundraising story comes out, there's a new element added to it. So I suspect there is more information not yet in the public domain that will hopefully come out over the coming days and weeks. And I think every piece of new information just makes it look worse.